Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show with the great John Dodds and our producer, one of the best of all time, Jason Ruck. I'm Tom Pippins, and we are brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of the program. Craig Caston is our MVP, and we thank Jim Sartori, Sartori Cheese. Great to have them come along, and boy, that looks delicious right now. You did it again, John Dodds. You get the likes of Tom Crean and now another chance to go with John Fanta. What a gifted guy he is. He's got all the credentials, doesn't he?
He's a great resource in the Big East. He's Mr. Big East. And I'd like to get his take on Marquette from the East Coast, kind of outside the area.
Yeah, national basketball broadcaster, writer for Fox Sports Digital. He is a very talented fella and a nice guy. It comes through here. So here we go with John Fanta, again brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits, Moonlight Graham, and we also have Jim Sartori, Sartori Cheese. We thank you, gentlemen, and now we get to John. We're so delighted to have you back to talk about Marquette. Obviously, on Tuesday night, it didn't go well at UConn. You could almost see that one coming. But here's a team that, as you're well aware, is 19 up and 6 down, 11 and 3, right behind Xavier in the Big East, and nobody expected that. Your perspective about the loss at UConn?
Well, I think that what we saw was what happens when the Huskies can just get rolling. They are a force to be reckoned with when they're hitting shots. And Jordan Hawkins got off to a really hot start on Tuesday night. And Connecticut got great point guard play from Tristan Newton. When UConn has point guard play, guys, they're a really dangerous team because they lack direction in moments on the offensive end of the floor. So I thought they came out and set the tone. I think in the Big East, timing is everything. Marquette was due to have a night like Tuesday evening. It didn't go their way, and UConn got a lead. And once UConn gets a lead at home, very dangerous to combat that. But from my perspective, Jordan Hawkins and Adama Sanogo were both on their A game. Andre Jackson played within himself, which has not happened as of late. And then you flip things to the Marquette side of things. Well, for them, they didn't get anything out of Cam Jones. And you're not going to win over some of the best in the Big East when Jones is off. And Oso Ighodaro and Omax Prosper are really a non-factor. And we know that this has been one of the best offenses in college basketball. So you take away some of those main guys. Obviously, Tyler Kolek kept playing well. But look, Marquette was due for an off night. And UConn had something to do with it defensively. Connecticut, if you're going to play Marquette, you cannot let them get hot from beyond the three-point arc. If that happens, you are not going to beat them. That's what makes them a second weekend caliber team in the NCAA tournament. I think their best defense is actually their offense because they can come at you in waves. Last night, UConn just gave Marquette a bit of a taste of their own medicine. And for the Golden Eagles, you hit the reset. I would be very confident in their ability to respond from this. I think this year's team is different than last year's team. I think Cam Jones, Omax Prosper, Oso Ighodaro will be fine. I just thought on Tuesday night, UConn put forward their best effort, and it resulted in a really dominant performance.
Well, you give all credit to UConn. They certainly looked like they could be Final Four, as you point out, if they get that good guard play. That notwithstanding, it's been an incredible season for Shaka Smart and company. And boy, this article you wrote was absolutely magnificent. In particular, John, as it relates to Shaka being a good fit, as you say here, the perfect fit at the perfect time. Why did you get that impression?
Well, I got that impression because the whole atmosphere inside the Marquette practice facility was different than it was under Steve Wojciechowski. It was confident. It was a chip on your shoulder, but in the right way. And it didn't feel fake. Honestly, it felt real. And that's what I got, the sense that I got. And you can sense what kind of a program you're looking at by talking to the people around the gym, the trainers, the administrators, the support, and talking with people around the coaching staff. Of course, some of them might say, well, you're going to get certain answers, and of course they're going to give you those answers. But I can tell you guys confidently, talking to people close around the program, they're comfortable in their own skin. They don't feel like they have to be people that they aren't. And I think that goes back to Shaka Smart. He's authentic. He's relationship based. The kids are bought in as a result. And when I was at their practice, Shaka called me over at the end of the practice. And I was talking with the kids a little bit. And he said to me, he goes, "Why don't you call a couple of plays here?" He had film on of his team. So he had me commentate a couple of plays. Jones ahead to Prosper for the slam, or what a bucket by Kolick from downtown. And I'm calling those plays, and Shaka turns to his guys and he says, "Well, all that's great, right? Like, those calls are fun. Here's what wasn't included in the game calls." He rewinded some of the tape to a diving play for a basketball, a hustle play, a tip here, a deflection there. And he said, just because the media talks about it one way, it was a very smart exercise. He wasn't trying to slight me. He just said, just because one guy might get the shine doesn't mean that we don't know how important each one of you are. And that is a perfect example of what he has built in Marquette in a short period of time. A selflessness, a sum greater than the parts. And it became very apparent to me that it wasn't just a bunch of cliches and phoniness. Shaka Smart is the real deal. And Marquette feels like Marquette again as a result.
I want the two Johns to talk turkey here in a moment, but I would just ask, kind of dovetailing off that, Shaka Smart cares for his kids, they care for him, and it seems to be genuine, John Fanta.
Absolutely. And he cares about making them better players and, as a result, better people. One of the things that he talks about is the fact that player development is also personal development. It really is. And I think that that's what we have seen here with this team, and that's what we've seen with this program. He really does invest himself in each kid. And guys, he didn't go out to the transfer portal. He didn't go get some smash freshman success story, some 4 or 5 star kid. He's done it organically with player development. What a concept, right? Just developing players. It seems as though that's kind of gone away in college basketball, but not at Marquette. They're doing it the old school way. And I think you've got to be invested in your kids and the relationships if you're going to keep them around. And that's what he's been able to do. He really does care about his players. He really does care about his people. And I think, Justin Lewis was a great player. He was a great player. They were surprised when he left for the NBA. However, I would say that when that happened, it allowed for the guys that were staying around to just become closer together, because none of them were thinking about the NBA. They were all thinking about winning college basketball games. And I think you're feeling that with this team.
Mm-hmm.
John, what strikes me about Shaka is how much time and effort he spends on getting input from the players who are not playing. He wants to have everybody connected, everybody give input, and he's got these categories of energy generating behaviors. He gets input from the players who are sitting out. They're trying to help the players who are playing. He wants them to stay connected. And kind of what he learned from last year, I think, and what you just pointed out, is that he told the players, if you want publicity as an individual, if you can sacrifice and be connected and make your teammates better, the whole can be so much greater than the sum of the individual parts that you'll get much more publicity and people will know about your game if we win.
That's totally what's happening there. And I think that you're seeing it at the end of the game at UConn on Tuesday night. There was a shot of the team on the bench, and it was all the guys embracing one another. And I know that we're not talking X's and O's right now, but I think it's really important that we talk about this, because This is how a program gets built. And that's what we're watching with Marquette. These guys love each other. They love playing with each other. Tyler Kolek and Cam Jones make up the best backcourt in America. Doesn't look like others are getting envious of that. They just are accepting of the fact that those guys are the best backcourt in America. And it works out because you've got a situation where Sean Jones and Chase Ross are both sort of not waiting in the wings, but they know their roles with the program this year. Role identification in 2023 college sports is so important because all these kids and their parents and their circles, they all believe that they're the best player on the planet. Every kid does. Now, I appreciate the confidence, but the fact is that's not how it works. You don't win games with everybody thinking that way. So I think it's really important that you bring that up, John, because he does invest in the bench players. He does invest in guys. And look, that's working. I mean, last night, I look at a guy like Ben Gold, who comes in 16 minutes and gives him 12 points. I'm sure that he's a guy that Shaka's had a lot of conversation with. And you know what? He got an opportunity last night on a night where other things weren't going the right way. But maybe that lifts Gold's confidence level a little bit. And who knows what that could lead to. The point is the season's a marathon. Along that marathon, you could go through obstacles. You could play well and lose in the Big East. Do you stay together as a unit? And the way you stay together as a unit is by letting each of your players know their importance to the whole. And so, John, that's exactly what your point was. And it's exactly what's happening there. And he could say it, but he really means it. Shaka Smart means what he says. This is not someone who's just making up rhetoric and making up words. This guy is real.
I wasn't that disappointed over the results of the UConn game because, as you mentioned, Ben Gold and Sean Jones kind of came off the bench. Sean Jones returned, and you could sense at the Butler game on Saturday that Osa Ighodaro and Omax Prosper and Tyler Kolek were starting to get a little bit tired. The dog days.
And Marquette's got a window here where they can manage the minute situation. This weekend against Georgetown, let's face it, that's a very winnable game, a game that they should take care of business in, and a game where the starters should not have to be playing 35 minutes. So what you've got to do when you're in those situations is you got to manage minutes. I mean, I think that Georgetown game, of course you want to put them away early, but that's a game where, frankly, Ross, Jones, and Gold can keep playing. They could be in there, and they could play for Marquette. I think it's very important to be able to manage through those games and not ride your horses too hard so that they could get a breather, get a break. Because the fact is, the next two games after that will determine whether or not Marquette wins the Big East regular season title. I'm talking about home to Xavier on Wednesday, February 15th, and at Creighton on Tuesday, February 21st. The two games following this weekend's against Georgetown will determine exactly where Marquette falls at the end. So I'm super intrigued to see how they manage this, but I do think you're bringing up a great point, John. Now's the time to take a deep breath, win this Georgetown game, and then you're going to have that game's on Saturday. They'll be well rested there. They've got Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and they get to be home Wednesday of next week when they host Xavier in one of the best games of the Big East season.
Yeah, that is key, absolutely. John, last year I think Marquette fans may be just a little bit cautious after the loss at UConn. We said, oh man, they kind of fade down the stretch and into that tournament game. But I get the sense that you feel that this is a tough enough team that they will rally and finish strong and hopefully make some noise not only in the Big East tournament, but in the Big Dance.
Well, I would argue that if this team can't respond from Tuesday night, then everything that we've just talked about, we were wrong on, which I don't think we are. I really don't. And if this Marquette team can't respond from the loss at UConn, a loss that's perfectly justifiable, let's face it. I mean, you go out to Connecticut, when they play well, you're probably going to lose because they're that good. They started the year 14-0. They beat Alabama. They beat Iowa State. That it would be a major disappointment if Marquette went one and done in the Big East tournament and went one and done, meaning made the NCAA tournament and lost. their first-round game. I think that this is the year where droughts need to end. That NCAA tournament drought without a win for a decade, that's got to end here with this team. This team has done too much to then fall off a cliff. And I don't think that this team is going to do that. I didn't expect it from last year's team. That was surprising. But once they started to go in that direction and it became a 2-3 game trend, you kind of saw the writing on the wall. But I do think that this team has what it takes to respond because their point guard is elite. And when you have an elite point guard who's one of the best in the country, I think he could be Big East Player of the Year, Tyler Kolnick, you're going to win a lot of games. And they've won 19 out of 25. So for me, I think that this team should be able to respond, and I think that anything less, Big East tournament's hard, right? You could lose a quarterfinal game if you're in a 3-6 game. I understand that. But if this team is a 4 or a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, they should win a game, if not 2. So anything less than that would be a disappointment. I think they would tell you that. But I do believe that this team is going to get back on track. I'm not pessimistic on that front.
Mm-hmm. John Fanta, you're a great resource for Big East information. When you talk to the other coaches, what's their take on Marquette?
Well, the take is it's just how hard they play, John. It's how hard they come at you. It's how much better Tyler Kolnick's gotten. I mean, here's a guy that was a 3-star recruit. He's from Rhode Island. How did Providence not get him? Or how did another team up in the Northeast not get him? Right? I mean, that's just it. He ended up at George Mason, and now he's in the hands of Marquette. And I think a lot of coaches are surprised at just how good he's been. I think other coaches say to me that one of the things that makes Marquette so unique is the fact that they've got mobile bigs. That also Iguodaro handles the ball, that he can roll off of screens, that he can move as quickly as he can. That makes them really dangerous, right? It gives them a formula that's different in the conference. In a conference that has Ryan Kalkbrenner at Creighton, Adama Sanogo at UConn, Joel Soriano at Butler, at St. John's, Manny Bates at Butler, Matt Nunji at Xavier. Iguodaro does things differently than these other big men. And so that's something that coaches have pointed out to me. The other thing that coaches have pointed out to me is that just because they're great offensively doesn't mean that they're not tough. They've got a toughness, and they've got a connection. Shaka has a connection with his players that some other coaches envy. They really do. So I think one coach said it best to me this year. He said, man, if they've got all their pieces going, they will kick your ass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what one coach said to me, and he's right. He's totally right. I mean, they've delivered some butt kickings in the Big East this year. You guys know it. Not an easy conference to do that in. They have. So coaches have spoken very highly of them. And I think the honest thing is coaches are surprised. I think coaches are saying, man, if this is how good they are right now, what's going to happen when he's finally able to get even more players, highly touted players, to then play for him? I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that all gets built out. But the consensus is, yeah, Marquette got this hire right. Because I think, honestly, guys, coaches previously looked forward to playing Marquette because they knew they could out-tough Steve Wojciechowski's teams. That's not the case now.
John, Tyler Kolnick, he's the kind of guy, if you will, I don't like to use this word, but you hate him if he's on the other team. But if he's on your team, you absolutely love him.
Yeah, no question about it. He plays like J.P. Macura of Xavier about 5 years ago or so. He's got this real grit, this real just, I don't give a you-know-what. And you know what? That's all right. That's all right. I talked with him last week, and he said, I've been doubted my entire life. And we're not doubting him right now, but that's the mentality that he plays with. And he said, he brought up the fact that earlier this year, late in the game, when Marquette was rolling past somebody, that Oso Iguodaro walked up to him at the end of the game, and he looked at him and he said, you know, I love playing with you. And Tyler said to me, that's our team. We enjoy playing with each other. We make the right plays. We play for one another. It's not about an ego. It's not about individualistic stuff. And guys, he has steadily gotten better as a shooter. He told me that he really reflected on the way last year ended and that other teams were going under on him on ball screen coverage. They were going under. So that if there was somebody slipping or somebody rolling or somebody flaring, teams were going to play that guy because they knew the ball was going to him. So that opened up a look for Tyler Kolek, and guess what? He wasn't making that shot. Now he's making teams pay when they don't play the ball screen correctly. It's really hard to defend Marquette when they screen, and they do it a lot. But I think that Tyler really took ownership. That's a guy that you love having on your team because he talks, but he backs up the talk.
When Shaka was able to find him in the portal, he was a 2-guard at George Mason. He was the A-10 newcomer of the year. So I'm thinking, well, this is obviously a catch and shoot 2-guard who can spread the floor. And he led the Big East in assists last year. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Just to have 193 assists to 58 turnovers is absurd. I mean, it really is absurd to think about that. And look, he shot 37% from three, which has been great. But guys, he shot 47% from the floor overall. I think that's impressive. And you know what? The other thing is when he makes things happen at the backboard, when he gets to the rim, we've seen him sometimes both hit that shot and pick up his own miss. You know, he averages over 4 rebounds a game. For a guy at his size, pretty good. I mean, that he's able to rebound the basketball a little bit too. So for me, I'm with you. He reminds me of a throwback player, an old school player. And don't you feel like, guys, when he's got the ball in his hands, something positive will happen for their offense.
Yeah, every once in a while he'll do something. It's kind of silly, that pass or a turnover. But by and large, as you say, he is in control and he's so proactive. He does make people around him better. I'd like to ask you, John, about Oso Iguodala. At times, he just looks so smooth to me. Have you seen a big jump from last year with him? And how big is he to Marquette's fortunes in crunch time?
Oh, he's huge. I mean, and we've seen a large jump. Got in the weight room, did even more conditioning, built up his body more, and was challenged and told, you've got to bring us to the promised land when it comes to front court play. You've got to be our man. And I think that he took on that challenge and he's played pretty well. Look, this is not a guy that it's not somebody who, you know, is going to score like crazy, but that's not their offense. I mean, he averages over 11 points per game. That's solid. What I look at it is he's averaging over 3 assists. They've worked with him on passing, on distributing, and being someone who can make a team pay when they provide too much defensive pressure at him. He's done a great job with that. And he shot the basketball very efficiently. 66% from the floor. He's done a great job with that. So for me with Oso Iguodala, now he had an 18-point performance against Seton Hall. He really crushed them. They don't have a traditional 5-man, and he made them pay. But he's a guy, he's just steady. I mean, he's just a steady presence for them. And as a distributor, 8 assists against DePaul. For a guy at his size, to be able to pass the basketball the way he has is super, super impressive. And I think they worked with him a lot on what you do off the ball. As a screener, as a roller, as somebody who's trying to get in the post to make something happen, as somebody who might catch the ball on the perimeter, and when a guy that's larger than you is on you, go by him or make them pay and find that catch and shoot look for your team. They've worked a lot with him on that. And he is a vital part of their team because I would argue that if you take him off the floor, who's going to do something like him at his particular position? Nobody. He's really a specific weapon for their team.
John, I want to ask you about the Big East Conference in general, but just a comment that on November 29th, I saw some Big East officials at the Marquette Baylor game in Milwaukee. And needless to say, there were some very euphoric people at the end of that game where here's Marquette, picked for 9th in the Big East, beat one of the top teams in the Big 12. And that one really put Marquette on the map this year. And that, I think, really put the Big East on the map also. Can you talk about the conference itself and what your take is on that?
Yeah, so the Big East got off to a bit of a slow start this season, and it developed into some of those narratives and takes, down years, step back, this or that. Well, when you have Villanova struggle out of the gates, it lent itself to saying, all right, how's this league going to go? Then Creighton loses 6 in a row. Now, 3 of those were without Ryan Kalkbrenner, but the point stands. I think that opened the conference up to getting some negativity. But what the Big East did in the Big 12 battle, holding even with the Big 12, the best conference in college basketball, that was huge. Marquette beating Baylor. How about Kansas State? How good have they been? They lost to Butler. Like, that was a huge result in that conference challenge, and there were others. And I think that opened the door up, and then the conference put together some really nice December results. Xavier got on a run where they beat Cincinnati on the road. They then beat West Virginia, who's got great metrics. They kept it rolling. And Marquette got it rolling. They winning 13 of 15 since the Wisconsin loss until last night. Other teams, Providence found their way. They only suffered 1 loss in December. And Creighton has bounced back. UConn, to me, Connecticut kept the conference afloat throughout the first 2 months. We cannot forget that. The fact that they started 14-0, when they went on their slump, guys, they had built up so much great real estate that they were going to be okay, but it elevated everybody else when you're picking off UConn, because that's a huge resume-boosting win.
He's John Fanta, a delight for sure, and he's brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of the MarquetteHoops.com basketball show. Also brought to you by Sartori Cheese, Jim Sartori, both Craig and Jim, so great in the community. John Dodge, you have a great website as well.
MarquetteHoops.com, part of the CBS digital network, 24/7 sports. And we archive all of our shows at the website. You'll see it on the front page. And we also have a newsletter. Be kept abreast of all of Marquette updates, and we can tell you who the guests are going to be on our show. Just drop your email address in that widget, and it might take you twice. I've heard it. Sometimes there's a little bug in it, but just do it twice and it'll get through.
Extra effort. That's what it's all about. For John Dodds, our producer, Jason Ruck, I'm Tom Pippins. Great to be with you again on My 24. Of course, Marquette hoping to get healthy again after losing to UConn Tuesday night. They take on the lowly Georgetown Hoyas coming up later this morning. Thanks again, everybody. God bless, and go Golden Eagles.